My name is Andrew Whooper. I'm a mixer and sound designer from Los Angeles, California. 5-time Grammy-nominated multi-platinum. Worked with the likes of Justin Bieber, Katy Perry, Rihanna, the Free Nationals, Frank Ocean, and the list goes on and on. I got my start at the world-famous Larrabee Studios in 2007, where my mentors were Dave Pensato and Jason Joshua. And in 2009, I went to work for Tricky Stewart, who mentored me even further and gave me my first shot at mixing a major artist.
I'm Andrew Whooper, and welcome to the first episode of the Irreversible Mix, where you won't find any plugin tutorials or compression tricks, because here we're training your intuition, we're training your taste, and we're training your decision making. On today's episode, I want to talk about why mixes die at the end. Let me ask you something. Have you ever spent hours and hours and hours or even days on a mix and you got it like 90% there, and then you leave and then come back, and then somehow the whole thing just kind of falls apart? Then you start second guessing, you start tweaking things that were already working, you completely lose perspective on the whole thing. And now suddenly a mix that before felt powerful and energetic and colorful now feels small and messy and just kind of unfinished. Well, if that's happened to you, you're certainly not alone. I'm sure it's happened to all of us at some point. In fact, it's where most mixes die. Not at the beginning when you're still organizing and learning all the parts and getting to know everything. Not in the middle when you're, doing your EQ and treating your sounds and getting your balances. It's right at the very end. Today, I want to explain why that happens. And more importantly, how to stop it from happening to you. See, finishing a mix is not about talent. When you get to the high level of engineering, everybody's talented. There's talent everywhere. It's about decisions. And engineers think at the end of the mix is about, the polish and cleaning the final details and master bus compression and EQ and limiting and getting it loud and multi-band compression, but it's not really about any of that. The end of the mix is about the finalizing, the intention, and the direction that you decided on before you even touched a fader. And what I've seen over the years of mixing records is that people don't ruin mixes because they don't have enough tools or don't have enough plugins or have the right tools or the right plugins. They ruin mixes because they just don't know when to stop. They don't know what decisions actually matter. So what happens then? They end up chasing tiny problems or making up problems in their head that aren't even real. They start adding things that weren't a part of the original vision or change the original vision entirely from what it was. They break the balance that was already working. You go from confident in yourself and your engineering skills to kind of reactive and insecure. And once you're in that reactive space, that's when the mix starts to unravel. There's a very specific moment where this begins. It's the moment where the mix is fully balanced, all the elements are in place, everything has been EQ'd and treated, and you're like one step away from finishing it. You're in the red zone. But you're still not fully committed. And that's why this is the danger zone. Because now you start thinking things like, maybe the vocal needs a little bit more brightness. Maybe the drums need a little bit more punch and drums need to hit harder. Maybe I should boost the limiter and make it louder or add another limiter in series. I think it needs to be louder. It's not quite loud enough. And then I'm going to go check it in the car. Once I hear it in the car, then I'll be sure. Then I'll be 100%. And suddenly you're not finishing a mix anymore. You're just, at this point, avoiding commitment. You're not confident enough in what you have. And now you're making changes without any clear intent. And when decisions are not intentional, that's when they start to contradict each other. And they start to compound in a negative way. You like boost energy in one place and then that reduces it somewhere else. Or you widen something that actually needed focus. Or you compress something that actually needed more movement. And little by little, the mix starts to lose its identity. It starts to lose clarity. It's not because you're a bad mixer or because you're not skilled enough at what you do. It isn't because your room isn't treated properly or your monitors aren't high end enough. It's because you just didn't lock the decisions. So, here's the real reason a lot of mixes fall apart at the end. It's simply because there's no clear decision framework guiding the final stage. There's no process being followed. People mix in a loop. Adjust, listen, adjust again. I hope it's better. Listen again. I'm going to turn up the vocals, turn up the drums. Let me bring up the bass. Okay. Yeah, and now the music needs to be louder. You're just chasing your tail. Finishing a mix requires a little bit of a different mindset. You got to move from the let me keep improving this mindset. It's got to be better. It can be better. It's not 100%. It's not perfect. You got to move from the let me keep improving this mindset to the now I'm committing to the final version of this record. And write this word down. The key word here is commit. That is a psychological shift that many engineers never make. As a result, they stay in tweak mode forever. Professional mixers follow a process without exception. And after enough reps of that process becomes intuition. It becomes instincts. It becomes their taste. And then the job is to finalize the intent that you committed to when you started. And once you've done that, print it, bounce it, send it off to your client for feedback. Now, I was trained by some of the greatest mixers of all time. I worked in the finest recording studios in the entire world. I had the best gear at my fingertips that money could buy. But my mixes were still inconsistent, even after I had hit records under my belt. And it wasn't until I created a repeatable process that my business really took off. Over time, I started noticing that every finished mix that I was really proud of kind of came together in a bit of a similar way. Not the music itself, but how I approached it from the jump. Not plugin choices, not vocal chains or parallel compression tricks. I searched forever for those, and I always thought that that was the key. But finally, I realized after a decade, it was decisions. And when I really dug in and categorized those decisions, that was when the light bulb went off. I finally understood. It all made so much sense all of a sudden. And this is the gold, guys. This is the career-changing and life-changing moment. Once I mapped this out, I knew I had something that I could use every day and deliver consistent mixes daily forever. I was able to break it down into 5 things. So these are the 5 decision-making pillars in my mixing process that finally launched my business into the stratosphere after a decade of inconsistent results. Number 1, intent. Number 2, hierarchy. Number 3, space. Number 4, energy. And number 5, finality. When those 5 things are clear, a mix feels inevitable. And when they're not, you just keep tweaking forever. And a lot of mixes fall apart because engineers try to finish them without locking in those 5 areas. So they just keep adjusting indefinitely without direction until they run out of time and they have to send the mix. So here's the mind shift that changes everything. You don't finish mixes by adding more. You finish mixes by locking in decisions at pivotal checkpoints using a repeatable process. Finishing is not perfection. Perfection is actually your enemy in music, not your ally. It's about commitment. At some point, you must decide, this is the emotional impact. This is the hierarchy. This is the space that it has. This is the energy that it brings. And this is the final version of that particular vision. And once those are locked, you stop touching things that don't support them. That is how professional mixes get across the finish line. Not by endless tweaking, but by irreversible decisions. This is exactly why I built what I call the irreversible mix approach. It's a way of finishing mixes where the final decisions are intentional, clear, and committed. So instead of circling the mix for hours and days, you know exactly when it's done, and more importantly, why it's done. Okay, wait a minute here. Wait. So you're saying irreversible? So like that means like no revisions? Like you can't change it ever? Of course not. All right, revisions are a part of the service that we provide. And once it's left your desk and landed in your client's hands, I mean, anything can happen. But let me be very clear about this. No mix should ever leave your desk unless you're 1000% sold and ready for the entire world to hear it, not just your client. And the way we achieve that level of confidence is to follow a process of compounding decisions that once those decisions are made, cannot be unmade without going all the way back to step one and reevaluating from there. Each step is irreversible in the context of the finished result. So, if you have ever felt like your mixes fall apart at the end, I actually made something for you. It's a free tool called the Irreversible Mix Checklist. It walks you through the exact decision points that tell you when a mix is actually finished. You can download it from the link in the description. Over the course of this series, we're going to be diving deep into these 5 steps in the framework. We're going to be looking at real-life mix sessions and putting the process to work so you can see exactly how it all breaks down. We're also going to be discussing all things related to helping you build an elite mixing business. Not a good business, not even a great one, an elite one, a top 1% mixing business. So, to recap, what did we learn today? Well, how do we keep our mixes from dying at the end? Number 1, we lock in key decisions. Intent, hierarchy, space, energy, finality. Number 2, we don't waver. We live and die by what we decide. And that's what leads to the third thing, and most important, we commit. All the way. We go all in. And when we follow a framework to do that, we are able to maintain our confidence about what we're doing. And in the end, look, your clients will let you know if you made the right decisions. But I will promise you, this approach will reduce your revisions by at least 80%, maybe more. So, until next week, happy mixing. Don't overthink it. Relax, follow the steps, and everything will start to make sense. And eventually, this will all become intuitive in your mind.